Jacob Cole's hands wouldn't stop shaking. 6 children. 6 small bodies huddled together in the frozen hay, lips blue, breath barely there. The smallest one, couldn't be more than 4, opened her eyes and whispered, "Are you the angel Mama said would come?" He wasn't an angel. He was a man who'd buried his own children 5 years ago and sworn never to feel this again. But here he was, kneeling in the snow, gathering strangers' babies into his arms, while an entire town pretended they didn't exist. If you want to see love rise from the ashes, and justice serve to those who abandoned the innocent, subscribe now and stay until the end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The first child he found was the boy with dark skin and blood on his lips. Jacob had been riding for 3 days straight, running from nothing, heading toward less. His horse had thrown a shoe 2 miles back, and he'd been walking since, the Wyoming wind cutting through his coat like it had a personal grudge. He wasn't looking for trouble, wasn't looking for anything except maybe a warm meal and a place to sleep that didn't smell like his own failures. Then he heard the coughing. It came from behind an abandoned barn, the kind of sound that made a man's gut twist. Wet. Deep. The cough of someone losing a fight they couldn't afford to lose. Jacob pushed through the snow, his boots breaking through the frozen crust with each step. The barn door hung crooked on its hinges, half buried in a drift. He shoved it aside. 6 pairs of eyes stared back at him. Children. All of them. Huddled together like a litter of abandoned pups, sharing what little warmth their small bodies could make. The oldest one, a boy of maybe 10 with hollow cheeks and eyes too old for his face, pushed himself in front of the others. His arms spread wide, like he could shield them all from whatever new horror had just walked through that door. "Stay back, mister!" The boy's voice cracked, but his jaw was set. "We ain't got nothing worth taking." Jacob didn't move. His eyes traveled over the group, counting, assessing. 2 small boys pressed together, one with a twisted leg, the other silent as stone. A girl with a rag tied over one eye, her good one watching him with fierce determination. Another girl, tiny, maybe 4, clinging to the older boy's leg like he was the last solid thing in her world. And the boy who'd been coughing, dark-skinned, thin as a rail, trembling with fever. 6 children, alone, in a barn that couldn't keep out a summer breeze, let alone a Wyoming winter. "I ain't here to take nothin'." Jacob's voice came out rougher than he intended. He cleared his throat. "Heard coughin'. Came to see." "Eli's sick," the tiny girl spoke up, her voice high and clear despite the cold. "He coughs up red stuff. Sammy says he needs medicine, but we ain't got none." "Grace, hush." The older boy, Sammy apparently, pulled her closer. His eyes never left Jacob's face. "We don't need help from strangers." "Reckon you do." Jacob took 1 step forward. The children flinched as a unit, and something cracked in his chest. "When's the last time y'all ate?" Silence. "The day before yesterday." The girl with the bandaged eye spoke quietly. "Sammy found some bread behind the bakery. We shared it." "Lily." Sammy's voice was sharp with warning. "He asked, Sammy. Mama always said lying was a sin." "Mama's dead." Sammy's voice went flat. "Her rules don't count no more." Jacob felt the words land in his gut like a fist. He knew that tone. He'd used it himself, 5 years ago, standing over 2 small graves with dirt still under his fingernails. "Where'd you come from?" Jacob asked. "There a town nearby?" "Willow Creek." Sammy spat the name like poison. 3 miles east. They don't want us there." "Why not?" The boy with the twisted leg spoke up for the first time. His twin. Had to be his twin. Same face, same sandy hair, sat silent beside him, eyes fixed on nothing. Because we're broken. The boy's voice was matter of fact. That's what Reverend Blackwood says. Broken things ain't worth fixin'. Ben. Sammy's voice softened just a fraction. Don't. It's true, though. Ben shrugged his small shoulders. He said God don't love broken things. That's why he put us out. Jacob's hands curled into fists at his sides. Put you out where? Here. Lily gestured to the barn with her thin arm. 3 days ago. Said the cold would take us to Jesus faster than feedin' us would. The words hung in the air, ugly and impossible. A man of God said that? Reverend Blackwood ain't a man of God. Eli's voice came weak but fierce between coughs. He's a devil in a preacher's coat. Eli knows, Grace nodded solemnly. Eli's smart. He can read and write and everything. That's enough. Sammy stepped forward, putting himself between Jacob and the others. His small fists were clenched, his whole body vibrating with desperate courage. You got questions? You ask me. Leave them alone. Jacob looked at this boy, this child carrying a weight no 10-year-old should know existed. He saw himself in that rigid spine, that stubborn jaw, the determination to protect even when protection was impossible. What's your name, son? I ain't your son. The words came fast, defensive. Name's Samuel Wade. Sammy. And these are mine. My responsibility. All 5 of them? All 5. Sammy's chin lifted. Their folks are dead or gone. I'm what they got. And your folks? Something flickered in Sammy's eyes. Pain, quickly buried. Pa died in the mines 2 years back. Ma, he swallowed hard. Ma left. Took up with some man heading to California. Didn't want me slowing her down. I'm sorry. Don't need sorry. Sammy's voice hardened again. Need people to leave us be. We'll figure it out. We always do. You'll die. Jacob said it plain. No sugarcoating. Another night in this barn, maybe 2, and you'll die. All of you. That what you want? What I want don't matter. Never has. The tiny girl, Grace, tugged on Sammy's sleeve. I don't want to die, Sammy. I want to get warm and eat something. And maybe, her voice dropped to a whisper, maybe find a mama who won't leave. Sammy's whole body seemed to crack, just for a moment. His hand found Grace's hair, smoothing it back with a gentleness that hurt to watch. Gracie, I told you, ain't no mama comin'. We just got us. But what if? Ain't no what if. Jacob made a decision. It was stupid. It was reckless. It was probably going to get him killed, or worse. He was going to do it anyway. There a doctor in that town of yours? Willow Creek? Sammy's eyes narrowed. Was. Dr. Holloway. Died 2 years back. His widow runs the place now. She ain't a real doctor, but she knows enough. She help you? Don't know. Never asked. Sammy's jaw tightened. We stay away from town folk. They stay away from us. That's how it works. Well, Jacob started unbuttoning his coat. Reckon that's about to change. He shrugged out of the heavy wool and held it toward the smallest girl. Grace stared at it like it might bite her. Go on, take it. You're shaking so hard I can hear your teeth from here. Mister, you'll freeze, Lily said, her one good eye wide. I've survived worse. He hadn't, actually, but these children didn't need to know that. Now, I'm going to need help getting y'all to this doctor lady. Sammy, you know the way? I know it. Sammy hadn't moved, hadn't taken his eyes off Jacob's face. Why you doing this? Doing what? Helpin'. Nobody helps. Not for free. What do you want from us? The question hit Jacob somewhere deep. He thought about lying, about saying something noble and easy. But this boy had been lied to enough. He deserved truth, even if the truth was ugly. I had kids once. Boy and girl. Twins. The words scraped out of him like broken glass. They died 5 years ago. Fire took their mama first, then infection took them. I wasn't there. I was 300 miles away chasing a man who didn't want to be caught, while my family burned. The barn went silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. So, Jacob forced himself to meet Sammy's eyes. I ain't doing this because I'm good. I'm doing it because I'm trying to be better. Because I got a debt I can't never repay, and maybe... His voice cracked. Maybe helping you all is a start. Maybe it ain't. But I gotta try. You understand? Sammy studied him for a long moment. The other children watched, waiting for their leader's verdict. You got a name, mister? Jacob. Jacob Cole. All right, Jacob Cole. Sammy's shoulders dropped, just slightly, just enough. I'll take you to the doctor, lady, but I'm warning you now, this town ain't kind to strangers, especially strangers what bring trouble. Noted. Jacob bent down, reaching for Grace. She shrank back at first, then, slowly, carefully, allowed herself to be lifted. She weighed nothing, a bundle of bones and rags and desperate hope. You smell like horses, she whispered against his neck. That's probably true. I like horses. She nestled closer, her small body finally stopping its terrible shivering. Sammy says horses are the only honest creatures. They show you who they are. Sammy sounds wise. Sammy's the wisest. Her voice was already growing drowsy, warmth and exhaustion pulling her under. He keeps us safe, like a papa, but better. Papas leave. Sammy never leaves. Jacob felt Sammy's eyes on him, hard and watchful. He met the boy's gaze over Grace's tangled hair. I won't take that from him. Your trust in him. I won't try to replace what he's done for y'all. Something shifted in Sammy's face. Not trust, not yet, but the beginning of something that might become trust, given time. Tommy can't walk good, Sammy gestured to the silent twin. Ben's leg don't work right neither. And Eli... He looked at the sick boy, fear breaking through his careful mask. Eli needs help bad. Real bad. Then we'd best get moving. Jacob shifted Grace to one arm and extended his other hand to Ben. You good to lean on me, son? Ben glanced at his silent brother. Tommy's eyes, empty and distant, flickered for just a moment. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. Tommy says okay. Ben took Jacob's hand. Tommy don't talk, but I know what he means. I always know. That's a special gift. Mama used to say that. Ben's voice wobbled. Before the bad man hurt her. Jacob's chest tightened. We don't have to talk about that now. I don't want to. Tommy don't want to neither. He ain't talked since that night. Not one word. Sometimes silence is how we survive. Ben looked up at him, surprised. You understand? More than you know, son. More than you know. They made their way out of the barn slowly, painfully. Sammy carried Tommy on his back, despite being barely bigger than his burden. Lily held Eli's arm, guiding him through the snow while he coughed and stumbled. Jacob bore Grace and supported Ben, his body already aching from the cold and the weight. The walk to Willow Creek was 3 miles of frozen hell. Grace slept against his chest, her breath warm and steady. Ben chattered nervously, filling the silence with stories about nothing, the way children do when they're scared. Lily sang softly, Irish ballads that her father had taught her, her thin voice carrying through the winter air like a prayer. Tommy made no sound at all, but twice Jacob caught him watching with eyes that held something other than emptiness. Something that might have been hope, buried so deep it barely registered. And Eli. Eli coughed blood into the snow every 100 yards. Eli burned with fever even as his body shook with cold. Eli was dying, and they all knew it. "Hold on, boy," Jacob said, the 10th time Eli stumbled. "We're almost there." "I ain't gonna make it." Eli's voice was barely a whisper. "It's all right, mister. I knew this was coming. Mama told me, before she passed. Said God needed me back. God's gonna have to wait." Eli managed a weak smile. "You ain't afraid of God?" "God and I have an understanding." Jacob kept his voice light, even as his heart clenched. "He stays out of my business, I stay out of his. Works out fine." "That's blasphemy." "Probably." "I like you, Jacob Cole." Eli's cough turned into something almost like a laugh. "You're honest. White folks usually lie." "You got reason not to trust white folks?" The humor drained from Eli's face. "Got every reason. My daddy was a free man, good man, worked harder than anyone. They killed him anyway, just for being black in the wrong place." "I'm sorry." "Being sorry don't bring him back." "No, it doesn't." Eli studied him, fever-bright eyes searching for something. "You got ghosts, Jacob Cole. I can see 'em hanging on you. Heavy." "Everybody's got ghosts." "Not like yours. Yours are screaming." Jacob didn't answer. Couldn't. Because this sick child had seen straight through him with a single glance. "Maybe," Eli continued softly, "maybe helping us might quiet 'em some. The ghosts. Maybe that's why you're really here." "Maybe." "But mister?" Eli's hand found Jacob's arm, gripping with surprising strength. "If you're gonna help, you gotta help all the way. Don't start something you can't finish. We've had too many people start and stop. It's worse than not having nothing at all." "I hear you." "Do you?" Eli's gaze didn't waver. "Because where we're going, that doctor lady's place, it ain't going to be easy. This town don't want us. They'll fight to keep us out. They'll fight you too for taking our side. You ready for that?" Jacob thought about the last 5 years. The running, the hiding, the slow death of everything that once made him feel alive. "Yeah," he said finally. "Reckon I am." The first building they saw was the church. It stood at the edge of Willow Creek, white paint peeling, steeple reaching toward a sky that had gone the color of bruises. A sign out front read, "House of Mercy Orphanage," in neat black letters. Sammy stopped dead. "Not that way." His voice had gone thin, reedy with fear. "Please, not that way." "It's the quickest route." "I don't care." Sammy was shaking now, and not from the cold. "That's Blackwood's place. That's where he—" The boy couldn't finish. "All right." Jacob didn't press. "We go around. Show me." They circled wide, giving the church a berth of several 100 yards. As they passed, Jacob saw a figure in the doorway. Tall, thin, dressed in black that seemed to swallow the light. The figure raised a hand in greeting. Sammy walked faster, nearly running despite his brother's weight on his back. The other children huddled closer together, a unit of shared terror. Jacob stored this away for later. Reverend Blackwood. The man who had left children to die in a frozen barn. The man these kids feared more than the cold, more than hunger, more than death itself. They would meet, Jacob decided, soon. And that meeting would not go well for the Reverend. But first, the doctor. Sarah Holloway's place sat at the edge of town, slightly apart from the other buildings. It was modest but well kept, with smoke rising from the chimney and a sign that read Holloway Medical Clinic beside the door. Jacob shifted Grace in his arms and knocked. No answer. He knocked again, harder. "Clinic's closed," a woman's voice, sharp and tired, came from inside. "Come back tomorrow." "Ma'am, I got 6 sick children out here, and one of them won't make it to tomorrow." Silence. Then the sound of footsteps, quick and decisive. The door flew open. Sarah Holloway was not what Jacob expected. She was tall, almost his height, with auburn hair escaping from a practical braid, and eyes the color of storm clouds. She was thin, too thin, and her hands were rough with work. But it was her expression that caught him, the way her face cycled through suspicion, surprise, and something like pain in the space of a heartbeat when she saw the children. "Dear God," the words came out strangled. "What happened to them?" "Found 'em in a barn 3 miles out. Been there 3 days by their telling. No food, no heat, no nothing." 3 days? Sarah's eyes found Sammy, then moved to each child in turn. "In this weather?" "Reverend Blackwood's charity." Sammy's voice was bitter. "He said Jesus would take us faster than feeding us would." Sarah's face went white, then red. Her hands clenched at her sides, knuckles going bloodless. "That man." Her voice shook with barely contained fury. "That sanctimonious, evil, despicable—" She stopped herself, visibly forcing calm. "Never mind. Get inside, all of you, now." The clinic's interior was warm, almost unbearably so after the frozen hours. A fire blazed in the hearth. Herbs hung drying from the rafters. A cot sat in one corner, medical supplies neatly arranged on shelves along the wall. Sarah moved with efficient speed, directing the children like a general commanding troops. "You, Sammy, was it? Put your brother on that cot. Lily, help Grace out of that wet coat. Ben, sit by the fire. And you," she turned to Eli, who had collapsed against the doorframe. "You're the one who won't make it to tomorrow." Eli managed a weak smile. "You got a good eye, ma'am." "I got a tired eye." Sarah was already beside him, her hands checking his forehead, his pulse, his breathing. "Consumption?" "Yes'm. Had it a while now." "How long?" 8 months, maybe 9. Mama had it too. Gave it to me before she passed." Sarah's expression flickered, sympathy quickly controlled. "You've been fighting a long time. Ain't got much fight left. Then we'll find you some more." She turned to Jacob, who still stood in the doorway, unsure of his place. "You, what's your name?" "Jacob Cole." "Well, Jacob Cole, are you planning to stand there looking useless, or are you going to help me save this boy's life?" Despite everything, Jacob felt his lips twitch. "Yes, ma'am. Just tell me what you need." "Hot water. There's a pump in the back. Fill every pot you can find and get them on that stove. Clean cloths from the chest by the window. And someone needs to spoon-feed the little ones. They're too weak to eat properly, but they need food in them yesterday." "I can do that." Sammy stepped forward. "I always feed Grace and the twins when Eli's too sick to help." Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Something passed between them, recognition perhaps. 2 people who had been carrying weights too heavy for their shoulders. "Good. There's broth warming on the stove. Small sips. If they eat too fast, they'll sick it back up." Sammy nodded and moved to the kitchen with purpose. The other children followed, drawn by the promise of food, which left Jacob alone with Sarah and the dying boy. "Hold him up." Sarah was preparing something, mixing powders with liquid in a small bowl. "I need to get this down his throat." Jacob knelt beside Eli, lifting his thin body until the boy was sitting upright. Eli's head lolled against Jacob's shoulder, too weak to hold itself up. Tastes awful, Eli mumbled. Always does. That's how you know it's working. Sarah brought the bowl to his lips. Drink. All of it. Eli drank, grimacing with each swallow. When it was done, he sagged back against Jacob, his breathing slightly easier. He needs rest. Sarah stood, wiping her hands on her apron. They all need rest, and food, and warmth, and about 100 things I don't have. What do you have? Sarah met his eyes. In the firelight, her face looked young and old at once, exhausted, determined, beautiful in the way of things that have weathered harsh storms. Not enough. Never enough. She turned away, busying herself with supplies. The town doesn't exactly line up to help me, not since Thomas died. Thomas? My husband, Dr. Thomas Holloway. Her hands stilled on a bottle of medicine. He died 2 years ago. Officially, it was diphtheria. He was treating patients, caught it himself, gone within a week. Officially? Sarah looked at him sharply. You catch things, don't you, Jacob Cole? Spent 20 years as a lawman. You learn to hear what people don't say. A lawman. Her voice was neutral, careful. Here to bring law to Willow Creek? No, ma'am. Just passing through. Yet you stopped to pick up 6 dying children and carry them 3 miles through a blizzard. Seemed like the thing to do. Most people don't think that way. Most people look the other way. Sarah's jaw tightened. This whole town looked the other way when Blackwood dumped those children. 3 days. 3 days they've been out there, and not one person thought to check on them. You didn't know? I live outside town for a reason, Mr. Cole. The good people of Willow Creek don't exactly keep me informed. She laughed, bitter and short. Though I suspect they'll have plenty to say once they realize I've taken these children in. You're keeping them? Where else would they go? Sarah spread her hands. Back to Blackwood's orphanage, where he starves them and works them and throws them out to die when they're not useful anymore? Back to the streets, where they've been surviving on scraps and charity that never comes? I didn't mean, I know what you meant. Sarah's voice softened, just a fraction. I'm sorry. I'm tired. I'm angry. And She stopped, pressing her hand to her forehead. I'm scared, if you want the truth. I can barely keep myself afloat. And now I've got 6 children who need everything I don't have. Then let me help. Sarah looked at him. Really looked at him for the first time. Her storm-gray eyes searched his face, looking for the lie, the trick, the hidden motive. Why? The question echoed Sammy's earlier. Why are you helping? What do you want? Jacob gave her the same truth he'd given the boy. Because I had children once. Had a wife. Lost them all because I wasn't there when they needed me. His voice roughened. I can't bring them back. Can't change what happened. But maybe I can help someone else not lose theirs. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. In the other room, Jacob could hear the children eating, their small voices rising and falling in conversation. Sammy was telling them something, keeping them calm, keeping them together. All right, Jacob Cole. Sarah extended her hand. Her grip was firm, calloused, surprisingly strong. You can stay, for now. Help me get these children healthy. But I warn you, this town isn't going to make it easy. I've never done easy, ma'am. Sarah. Her lips twitched, almost a smile. If you're going to stay under my roof and help me defy an entire town, you might as well call me Sarah. Sarah, then. And Jacob? Her grip tightened on his hand, her eyes holding his with fierce intensity. If you hurt those children, if you give them hope and then take it away, I will make you regret the day you were born. Do we understand each other? Yes, ma'am. He didn't flinch, didn't look away. Perfectly. She released his hand. Good. Now get that water boiling. We've got work to do. Jacob moved to the pump, his body exhausted, his heart strangely light. Behind him, Sarah bent over Eli, adjusting his blankets, murmuring something soft and soothing. In the kitchen, Grace's high voice carried through the door. "Sammy, do you think the horseman will stay? I like him. He's warm." "I don't know, Gracie." Sammy's voice was cautious, guarded. "We'll see." "I hope he stays. I hope the pretty lady keeps us. I hope—" Grace's voice wobbled. "I hope we don't have to go back to the cold place." "You won't." Sammy's voice hardened with determination. "I won't let you. I won't let any of you go back there. Ever." Jacob pumped water into the first pot, his hands steady despite the trembling in his chest. 6 children, a widow doctor, a town full of people who had looked away, and somewhere out there, a reverend who put children in the snow to die. This wasn't his fight. He was just passing through. He had no stake in this town, these people, these impossible, beautiful, broken children who had somehow cracked open something he'd thought was dead inside him. But as he filled pot after pot, as the warmth of the clinic seeped into his frozen bones, Jacob Cole knew the truth. He wasn't leaving. Not until those children were safe. Not until the people who had hurt them faced justice. Not until this widow, with her fierce eyes and tired hands, had someone standing beside her. Not until this was finished. And God help anyone who tried to stop him. The first night was the longest of Jacob's life. He sat by the fire, unable to sleep, listening to the sounds of the clinic settling around him. Grace whimpered in her dreams, calling for a mother who would never answer. Ben murmured comfort to his silent twin, their small bodies curled together on a pallet by the hearth. Lily sang softly in her sleep, fragments of Irish lullabies that broke and reformed like waves on a shore. And Eli coughed, again and again, that terrible wet sound that meant his lungs were filling with what they shouldn't hold. Sarah hadn't slept at all. She moved between the children like a ghost, checking temperatures, adjusting blankets, spooning medicine into Eli's mouth whenever his coughing eased enough to swallow. "You should rest." Jacob's voice was quiet in the darkness. "I can watch them. I rest when they're stable." Sarah didn't look up from Eli's pale face. "We're not there yet." "When's the last time you slept? Really slept?" She paused, her hand on Eli's forehead. "I don't remember." "That ain't good, Sarah." "Neither is letting a child die because I was too tired to notice he'd stopped breathing." Her voice cracked, just slightly. "I've lost patients before. It never gets easier. But a child—" She shook her head. "I won't lose him. I can't." "You know him? From before?" "No, but I know what it's like to be thrown away. To have people decide you're not worth saving." Sarah finally looked at Jacob, her eyes red-rimmed and shadowed. "Thomas and I couldn't have children. His choice, not mine. But I kept his secret. His mother blamed me anyway, said I was defective, that God was punishing me for some sin I couldn't remember committing. That's cruel. That's Willow Creek." Sarah laughed, bitter and hollow. "This town runs on cruelty. They just dress it up in Sunday clothes and call it righteousness." A small voice cut through the darkness. "Miss Sarah?" Grace stood in the doorway to the kitchen, Jacob's coat still wrapped around her tiny frame. Her eyes were huge in her thin face, wet with tears she was trying not to shed. "What is it, sweetheart?" Sarah's voice transformed instantly, softening into something warm and safe. "Bad dream? I had to use the privy, but it's dark and I'm scared to go alone." Grace's chin trembled. "Sammy always takes me, but he's sleeping and I didn't want to wake him because he's so tired and—" "I'll take you." Jacob stood before he could think about it. "If that's all right." Grace looked at him, then at Sarah. Some silent communication passed between the woman and the child. Sarah nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Okay." Grace reached up, her small hand finding Jacob's. "But you have to hold my hand the whole time." "Promise?" "Promise." The privy was behind the clinic, a short walk through snow that had finally stopped falling. Grace's hand gripped Jacob's with fierce determination, her bare feet shoved into boots 3 sizes too big. "The stars are pretty." Grace tilted her head back, her breath fogging in the cold air. "Mama used to say each star was an angel watching over us. Do you think that's true?" "I think it might be." "I hope my mama's up there. I never met her, but I like thinking she's watching." Grace's voice was matter-of-fact, the way children discuss impossible things. "Sammy says we shouldn't hope for things we can't have, but I can't help it. Hoping is the only thing that's free." Jacob felt something twist in his chest. "That's a smart way to look at it." "Eli taught me that. Eli's the smartest person I know, even smarter than Sammy, but don't tell Sammy I said so." Grace squeezed his hand. "Jacob, are you going to stay?" "For a while." "How long is a while?" "I don't know yet." Grace was quiet for a moment, then, very softly, "My mama didn't know either. She left me at the church when I was a baby, just put me on the steps and walked away. Reverend Blackwood says she was a sinful woman, and I'm lucky he took me in." "Reverend Blackwood is wrong about a lot of things." "I know." Grace's voice hardened, sounding far too old for 4 years. "He's mean. He hits Sammy when Sammy talks back. He doesn't feed us enough. He makes Eli work even when Eli can't breathe." She looked up at Jacob, her eyes fierce in the starlight. "I don't want to go back there. Ever. I'd rather die in the snow than go back to the house of mercy." Jacob stopped walking. He knelt down, bringing himself to Grace's level, his hands on her small shoulders. "Listen to me, Grace. Listen careful." His voice was rough with emotion he couldn't quite control. "You ain't going back there. None of you are. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, or next week, or next year, but I know this. As long as I'm breathing, Reverend Blackwood ain't never touching you again." "You promise?" "I promise." "Sammy says promises from grown-ups don't mean nothing." "Sammy's got good reason to think that. But I ain't like the grown-ups you've known, Grace. When I make a promise, I keep it, even if it kills me." Grace studied his face for a long moment, her eyes searching for the lie. Whatever she found there made her nod slowly. "Okay." She slipped her hand back into his. "I believe you, Jacob. Don't make me sorry." "I won't." They finished their trip to the privy in silence. When they returned to the clinic, Grace went straight to where Sammy lay sleeping and curled up against his side. The older boy stirred, his arm automatically wrapping around her, protecting even in sleep. Sarah watched from across the room, something unreadable in her expression. "She trusts you." It wasn't the question. "Don't know why." "I do." Sarah rose, stretching muscles that had been still too long. "She sees what I see, what Eli sees. You've got ghosts, Jacob Cole, but you're not running from them anymore. You're trying to make peace with them." "Is it that obvious?" "Only to people who know what ghosts look like." Sarah moved to the window, peering out at the darkness. "Dawn's coming, and with it, trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "The Blackwood kind." Her jaw tightened. "He'll know by now. Word travels fast in a small town." The man who brought his property to the widow doctor's clinic. He won't let that stand. They ain't his property. In this town, they are, or close enough. Sarah turned to face him. You need to understand something, Jacob. Josiah Blackwood isn't just a preacher. He owns half the businesses in Willow Creek. He's got the sheriff in his pocket, the mayor eating out of his hand. When he speaks, people listen. When he acts, people look the other way, like they looked the other way when he put 6 children in a barn to die. Exactly like that. Sarah's voice was heavy with exhausted fury. Thomas tried to fight him, tried to expose what was happening at that orphanage. 6 months later, Thomas was dead. You think Blackwood killed him? I think Thomas was healthy as a horse until he started asking questions about children who disappeared from the House of Mercy. I think he found something big, and I think someone made sure he couldn't tell anyone. What kind of something? Sarah hesitated. Her eyes moved to the sleeping children, then back to Jacob. Thomas kept notes, a journal. I've never been able to find it. Either someone took it, or he hid it somewhere I haven't looked. She wrapped her arms around herself. But a week before he died, he said something I'll never forget. He said, Sarah, this goes deeper than abuse. Blackwood isn't just hurting these children. He's selling them. Selling them? To ranches, mines, whoever will pay for cheap labor. Children nobody will miss. Children whose deaths can be blamed on disease or accident. Sarah's voice shook. Thomas was going to prove it. He was gathering evidence, building the case. And then he was dead, and the evidence vanished, and I was left alone with nothing but suspicions. Jacob felt the old, familiar anger rising, the cold fury he'd thought he'd buried along with his capacity to feel. How long has this been going on? Years, according to Thomas. Maybe since Blackwood came to this town. And nobody's stopped him? Who would stop him? He's a man of God. He's respected, feared. Sarah laughed, the sound like breaking glass. And anyone who tries ends up dead or ruined or run out of town. Thomas was just the latest. He won't be the last. Sarah looked at him sharply. What does that mean? It means I ain't Thomas. I ain't a doctor with a reputation to protect. I ain't got nothing to lose. Jacob's voice dropped low. I spent 20 years tracking bad men, Sarah. I know how they think, how they move, where they make mistakes. Blackwood's gotten away with this because nobody's fought back with the same weapons he uses. And what weapons are those? Fear, information, the willingness to go further than the other man. Jacob met her eyes. I ain't a good person, Sarah. I've done things I ain't proud of. But those things taught me how to stop people like Blackwood. The question is, are you willing to let me try? Sarah was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled. Children breathed. The world outside stayed dark and cold and indifferent. Yes. The word came out barely a whisper. God help me, yes. Whatever it takes to keep those children safe. Whatever it takes to make Thomas's death mean something. Then we start today. Tell me everything you know about Josiah Blackwood. The morning brought visitors. Sarah had just finished feeding the children, thin porridge stretched with the last of her flour, when the knock came. Not the gentle knock of a neighbor, but the hard, demanding pound of authority. Mrs. Holloway! The voice was cold, official. Open up. Sheriff's business. Sammy was on his feet instantly, his body between the door and the younger children. It's them. They're here to take us back. Nobody's taking anyone. Sarah's voice was calm, but Jacob saw her hands tremble as she wiped them on her apron. Jacob, stay with the children. Let me handle this. Sarah, please. He nodded, moving to stand near Sammy. The boy looked up at him, fear breaking through his careful mask. You promised, Sammy whispered. You promised Grace. You gonna keep it? Watch me. Sarah opened the door. Sheriff Harlan Wells was a big man, running to fat, with small eyes and a mouth that looked like it had never smiled. Behind him stood two deputies, hands on their pistols, and behind them, Reverend Josiah Blackwood. He was exactly what Jacob had expected. Tall, thin, dressed in black that seemed to absorb the light. His face was pleasant, forgettable, the kind of face that inspired trust in people who didn't know better. But his eyes were pale gray, almost colorless, and they held nothing at all. Looking into them was like looking into an empty room. Mrs. Holloway. Blackwood's voice was warm, gentle, perfectly pitched for Sunday sermons. I do hope we're not disturbing you. Reverend? Sheriff? Sarah's voice betrayed nothing. What brings you here? I think you know, Blackwood smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. I've been informed that you're harboring certain individuals, children who belong to my care. These children were dying in an abandoned barn. I'm providing medical treatment. And I appreciate your charitable spirit. Truly, I do. Blackwood spread his hands, the picture of reasonableness. But these children are wards of the House of Mercy. Their care is my responsibility, not yours. I'm sure you understand. I understand that you left them to freeze to death. Silence. Sheriff Wells shifted uncomfortably. The deputies exchanged glances. Blackwood's smile never wavered. I'm afraid you've been misinformed, Mrs. Holloway. Those children wandered off on their own. We've been searching for them desperately. Thank God they're safe. They didn't wander. They were put there, by your men, on your orders. That's a serious accusation. Blackwood's voice cooled by degrees. I hope you have evidence to support it. I have 6 witnesses. You have 6 troubled, confused children who have been known to fabricate stories for attention. Blackwood shook his head sadly. It's a common problem among orphans, I'm afraid. The desperate need for notice leads them to all sorts of creative narratives. Jacob had heard enough. He stepped into the doorway, positioning himself beside Sarah. Blackwood's colorless eyes found him, assessed him, catalogued him in an instant. And who might this be? Name's Jacob Cole. Jacob kept his voice flat. I'm the one who found those children. 3 days in the cold, no food, no water, no shelter. One of them's got consumption so bad he's coughing blood. Another hasn't spoken a word in 2 years from what he witnessed. The littlest one weighs less than a sack of flour. Tragic. Blackwood's expression arranged itself into sympathy. Which is why they need to return to proper care immediately. The House of Mercy has facilities, resources. The House of Mercy has a graveyard full of children who died of accidents and illness. Jacob's voice cut like a blade. How many kids have you buried in the last 5 years, Reverend? How many just disappeared? Something flickered in Blackwood's pale eyes, just for a moment. Then the mask was back. I don't care for your implication, Mr. Cole. I don't care what you care for. Sheriff Wells stepped forward. Now look here, mister. I don't know who you think you are, but Reverend Blackwood is a respected member of this community. You can't just what? Ask questions? Expect answers? Jacob turned to the sheriff. What's your role in this, lawman? You get paid to look the other way? Or is it more of a volunteer position? Wells's face went red. You're pushing your luck, stranger. Been doing that my whole life. Gentlemen, Blackwood's voice was oil on troubled waters. There's no need for hostility. I came here in good faith, hoping to resolve this situation peacefully. But I see that won't be possible. He turned to Sarah. Mrs. Holloway, I'll be filing a formal complaint with the territorial authorities. These children are my legal wards. What you're doing is kidnapping. What I'm doing is saving their lives. We'll let the courts decide that. Blackwood smiled again, cold as the grave. In the meantime, I'd advise you to reconsider your position. This town has been tolerant of your presence since your husband's death. That tolerance has limits. Is that a threat? It's an observation. Blackwood tipped his hat. Good day, Mrs. Holloway. Mr. Cole. I'm sure we'll speak again soon. He turned and walked away. The sheriff and deputies followed, casting dark looks over their shoulders. Sarah stood rigid until they disappeared from sight. Then her legs gave out. Jacob caught her before she hit the floor. Easy. He guided her to a chair. Breathe. Just breathe. He's going to take them. Sarah's voice was ragged with terror. He's got the law on his side, the courts, everything. I can't fight that. I can't. Yes, you can. Jacob knelt before her, taking her hands in his. We can. Together. You don't know what he's capable of. I know exactly what he's capable of. I've dealt with men like him before. They think they're untouchable because everyone's afraid of them. Jacob's jaw set. But fear only works if you let it. We stop being afraid, we start fighting back. And men like Blackwood find out they ain't as powerful as they thought. He'll destroy us. He'll try. Jacob. Sarah's eyes found his, desperate and searching. Why are you doing this? These aren't your children. This isn't your fight. You could walk away right now and nobody would blame you. Jacob was quiet for a long moment. Behind him, he could hear the children stirring. Grace's high voice asking what was wrong. Sammy's low response, calm and reassuring, even when he was terrified. When I buried my family, Jacob said slowly, I made a promise, stood over their graves, and swore I'd spend the rest of my life making up for not being there. For 5 years, I didn't know how. Couldn't find a way to make it mean anything. He squeezed Sarah's hands. And then I found 6 kids dying in a barn. Found a woman who'd sacrifice everything to save them. Found a fight worth having. His voice roughened. This is how I keep my promise, Sarah. This is how I make peace with my ghosts. By standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves. By being here when it matters. Sarah stared at him. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but she didn't look away. You really mean that? Every word. Then God help us both. She gripped his hands tight. Because we're about to go to war with the devil himself. The next few days were a delicate balance of healing and preparation. Eli's fever broke on the 3rd morning. Sarah wept with relief when she saw the color returning to his cheeks, the clarity coming back to his eyes. Thought you was gonna let me die, ma'am. Eli's voice was weak but steady. Thought that's what white folks did. Not this white folk. Sarah smoothed his hair back. And not that white folk either. She nodded toward Jacob, who was helping Ben practice walking with a makeshift crutch. Eli watched Jacob for a long moment. He's different. Yes, he is. How do you know? How do you know he won't turn on us when things get hard? I don't know for certain. Sarah's voice was honest. But I believe. Sometimes that's all we have. Mama believed. Look where it got her. Your mama's belief kept you alive, Eli. Kept you fighting when anyone else would have given up. Sarah took his hand. Faith isn't about being right. It's about having something to hold on to when everything else is falling apart. Eli was quiet. Then, slowly, his fingers closed around hers. I want to believe, ma'am. I'm just tired of being disappointed. I know, sweetheart. I know. Across the room, Tommy spoke. It wasn't a word, not exactly. Just a sound, a small, as he watched Jacob show Ben how to balance. But it was the first sound anyone had heard from him in 2 years. Ben froze. His eyes went wide. "Tommy? Tommy, did you—" Tommy made the sound again, his eyes fixed on Jacob's hands as they steadied his brother. "Jacob," Ben's voice shook. "Jacob, Tommy's trying to—" Jacob knelt down, bringing himself to Tommy's level. He didn't speak, didn't push, just waited. Tommy's mouth worked, his brow furrowed with effort, and then, barely a whisper, "Safe." The word hung in the air like a miracle. Ben burst into tears, throwing his arms around his twin. Sammy rushed over, his careful control cracking into something raw and broken and beautiful. Grace and Lily piled on, a tangle of thin arms and joyful sobs. Sarah pressed her hand to her mouth, watching through streaming eyes. And Jacob stood apart, his own eyes burning, feeling something crack open inside him, something he'd thought was dead forever. Hope. That night, after the children were asleep, Sarah found Jacob on the porch. "You did that." Her voice was soft. "You made him feel safe enough to try." "I didn't do anything. Just showed him nobody was going to hurt him." "That's everything, Jacob. To a child who's been hurt as badly as Tommy, that's everything." They stood in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge in the clearing sky. "Thomas would have liked you." Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. "He was like you in some ways. Couldn't walk past injustice without trying to fix it. Couldn't see someone suffering without reaching out." "Is that what got him killed?" "I think so. He was too good for this world. Too honest." Sarah wrapped her arms around herself. "I've spent 2 years trying to be hard enough for both of us, trying to protect myself so I could keep helping people. But I'm tired, Jacob. So tired of fighting alone." "You ain't alone anymore." Sarah turned to look at him. In the starlight, her face was open, vulnerable, beautiful. "I barely know you." "You know what matters." "Do I?" "You know I keep my promises. You know I'd die before letting Blackwood touch those children. You know—" He stopped, suddenly uncertain. "What? What do I know?" Jacob took a breath. "You know that every time I look at you, I feel something I thought I'd never feel again. Something I ain't sure I deserve to feel." Sarah went still. "Jacob." "I ain't asking for anything. Ain't expecting anything. I just—" He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with his own fumbling words. "I needed you to know, in case tomorrow goes bad, in case Blackwood—" "Stop." Sarah stepped closer. Her hand found his chest, resting over his heart. "Stop talking about tomorrow. Stop planning for the worst. Just be here, with me, right now." "Sarah, I ain't good at this. Ain't been close to anyone in 5 years. Don't even remember how—" She kissed him. It was soft, gentle, questioning. A beginning, not a demand. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with tears. "I'm not asking for promises, Jacob Cole. I'm not asking for forever. I'm just asking you to stay, to fight beside me, to help me build something worth protecting. I can do that. Then that's enough." She kissed him again, briefly. "For now, that's enough." They stood together in the cold, holding each other. Two broken people finding something whole in the wreckage of their lives. And in the shadows beyond the clinic, a figure watched, made note, then slipped away into the darkness to report what he'd seen. Reverend Blackwood would be very interested indeed. The attack came 3 days later. It started with the store. Sarah went to town for supplies and found every shop door closed to her. The general store, the feed store, the apothecary, all of them with the same message. "Sorry, Mrs. Holloway, can't help you today." Why not? Just can't. Try somewhere else. But there was nowhere else. Willow Creek was the only town for 50 miles. She returned to the clinic empty-handed, her face pale with anger and fear. Blackwood, she spat the name. He's turned the whole town against us. Expected as much. Jacob had been teaching Sammy to shoot, the boy showing natural talent with the old revolver. We'll manage. I can hunt. Trap. There's a stream nearby for fish. For how long? Winter's barely half over. We've got 6 children, 2 adults, and supplies for maybe 2 weeks. Then we'll stretch them to 4. And then? And then, we figure something else out. Jacob set down the revolver, moving to Sarah's side. He's trying to starve us out. Make us give up the children so we can survive. It won't work. It might. It won't. His voice was firm. Because we're not just going to sit here and take it. We're going to fight back. How? Jacob smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Blackwood's got secrets. Your husband knew some of them. Maybe he left those notes somewhere you haven't looked. Maybe someone in town knows something and is too scared to talk. Maybe... A crash from outside. Glass breaking, children screaming. Jacob was moving before the sound finished, his revolver in his hand. He burst through the door to find... fire. Someone had thrown a torch through the clinic window. The curtains were burning, flames licking up the wall, spreading fast. Water! Sarah was already moving, grabbing buckets. Jacob, the children! I've got them. He ran inside. Smoke was filling the front room, thick and choking. Through the haze, he saw Sammy herding the younger children toward the back door. This way! Jacob grabbed Grace, who was frozen with terror. Everybody out, now! They made it, all of them, tumbling into the snow behind the clinic, coughing and gasping, but alive. Sarah joined them moments later, soot-streaked and wild-eyed. The fire! Let it burn. Jacob's voice was cold. We got what matters. They watched the front of the clinic go up in flames. Their home, their supplies, their safety, all of it gone in minutes. Where do we go now? Lily's voice was small, frightened. Where can we go? Sammy's arm went around her. His face was hard, closed. The trust he'd been building shattered all over again. Nowhere. His voice was bitter. There's nowhere for people like us. That ain't true. Jacob knelt down, pulling the children close, all of them, even Sammy. Listen to me, all of you. This is bad. I ain't gonna lie and say it isn't. But we're alive. We're together. And as long as that's true, we can keep fighting. Fighting for what? Eli's voice was hoarse from smoke. They burned our home. They'll burn anything we try to build. Then we don't build. Not yet. Jacob's eyes found Sarah's. We run. We hide. We survive. And when we're strong enough, when we've got what we need, we come back. And we burn them instead. Silence. The fire crackled. Snow fell soft and cold around them. I know a place. Sarah's voice was quiet but steady. Thomas's hunting cabin, 20 miles north, in the mountains. Nobody knows about it except me. We could... Then that's where we go. Jacob rose, his decision made. Right now, tonight, before Blackwood realizes the fire didn't finish us. But Jacob... Sarah gestured at the children, at their thin clothes and bare feet. 20 miles in this weather. Is better than dying here. He was already moving, salvaging what he could from the back of the clinic, where the fire hadn't reached. We've got one chance, Sarah. One chance to get away, get strong, and come back swinging. We take it or we die. There ain't no middle ground. Sarah looked at him, looked at the children, looked at the ruins of everything she'd built. All right." She straightened her spine, lifted her chin. "Let's move." They walked into the mountains as dawn broke behind them. 6 children and 2 adults with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the fire in their hearts. Behind them, Willow Creek burned. But so did their resolve. The cold was a living thing. It wrapped around them like chains, seeping through thin clothes, biting into exposed skin, stealing breath before it could fully form. Grace stopped walking first, her small legs simply giving out beneath her. She didn't cry, didn't complain, just sat down in the snow and looked up at Jacob with eyes that had already accepted the worst. "I'm tired, Jacob. Can I sleep now?" "No, sweetheart." He lifted her before the cold could settle deeper. "No sleeping, not yet." "But I'm so tired." I know you are." He pressed her against his chest, trying to share what little warmth he had left. "Tell me a story, Grace. Tell me about those angels your mama said lived in the stars." "You want a story?" "More than anything." So Grace talked. Her small voice, thin and wavering, filled the silence as they climbed. She told him about angels with wings made of moonlight, about her mama, who she'd never met but loved anyway, about Sammy, who was brave, and Eli, who was smart, and Lily, who could see things other people couldn't, even though she only had one eye. Jacob listened to every word. Behind him, Sarah carried Tommy on her back, while Ben limped along beside her, refusing help even as his twisted legs screamed with each step. Sammy had Lily's hand, guiding her through the darkness, while Eli struggled between them, his breathing a rattling wheeze that grew worse with every mile. They walked for hours. The sun rose, and still they walked. The cabin had to be close, had to be, because if it wasn't, Jacob knew with terrible certainty that they wouldn't all make it. "There!" Sarah's voice cracked with relief. "Through those trees. Do you see it?" Jacob saw it, a small structure, half hidden by snow and overgrown brush, but solid, standing, real. "Thank God." The words came out before he could stop them. "Thank God." They stumbled the last 100 yards, like survivors of a shipwreck reaching shore. The door was frozen shut, but Jacob threw his shoulder against it until the ice cracked and gave way. Inside was cold, but it was dry, protected, safe. "Eli first." Sarah was already moving, her exhaustion forgotten. "Get him by the fireplace. Sammy, see if there's kindling in that box. Jacob, blankets. There should be blankets in the chest." They worked together without speaking, a team forged by desperation. Within minutes, a small fire crackled in the hearth. Blankets appeared, musty but warm. The children huddled together, sharing heat, sharing space, sharing survival. Grace fell asleep against Jacob's chest before he could set her down. He didn't try to move her. "We made it." Sarah's voice was hollow with exhaustion. She sat across from him, Tommy curled in her lap, her back against the wall. "I wasn't sure we would." "Neither was I." "Liar." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "You never doubted for a second." "I doubted every second. Just didn't see the point in saying so." Silence settled between them, comfortable despite everything. The fire popped and crackled. Children breathed. Outside, the wind howled its frustration at being denied its prey. "Thomas built this place." Sarah's voice was soft, distant. "Our first year of marriage. Said every man needed somewhere to escape to when the world got too heavy." She laughed quietly. "I teased him about it. Said he was just looking for an excuse to avoid his chores." "Was he?" "Probably. Thomas hated chores." Her eyes found the flames. "But he loved this cabin. Spent hours up here, hunting, thinking, writing in that journal of his." She paused. "The journal I never found." Jacob felt something shift in his chest. You think it might be here? I never looked. After he died, I couldn't face this place. Couldn't face the memories. Sarah's hand found Tommy's hair, stroking absently. But now I'm wondering if that's exactly what he wanted. If he knew someone might come looking for his notes, and he hid them where no one would think to check. Where would he put something like that? I don't know. Thomas was clever. He loved puzzles, hidden meanings, things that only made sense if you knew him well. Sarah's brow furrowed. He used to leave me little notes, love letters hidden in strange places, inside books, behind picture frames, once even baked into a loaf of bread. Man sounds like a romantic. He was. God, he was. Sarah's voice caught. The last note he left me, I found it a week after he died, hidden in my medicine bag. It said, "If you're reading this, I'm sorry. Look where we first said I love you. The truth is waiting." Did you look? No, I was too grief-stricken, too scared. And by the time I gathered the courage, the clinic had been searched, ransacked. I assumed whoever killed him had already found whatever he'd hidden. But you never checked this place. No, Sarah met his eyes. I never checked this place. Morning found Jacob searching. The cabin was small, just one room with a loft above, but Thomas Holloway had been a thorough man. Every board could hide a secret. Every stone in the fireplace could conceal a compartment. What are you looking for? Sammy watched from his spot by the fire, where he'd been keeping watch over the younger children. Answers. Jacob ran his hands along the wall, feeling for irregularities. Your friend Eli said Blackwood was selling children. The doctor who lived here, he was trying to prove it. And you think he left proof behind? I think men like your doctor don't give up, even when they know they're going to die. Jacob paused, looking at the boy. You've been quiet since we got here. Quieter than usual. Sammy's jaw tightened. Just thinking. About what? About how this always happens. The words came out bitter, old. People say they'll help. They make promises. And then something goes wrong, and they leave, or they die, or they decide with too much trouble. You think that's what's going to happen here? I think I'd be stupid to think anything else. Jacob stopped his searching. He crossed the room and sat down beside Sammy, close, but not touching. The boy tensed, but didn't move away. I had a son. Did I tell you that? You said you had twins. Daniel and Rose, 6 years old when they died. Jacob's voice steadied with effort. Danny was like you. Always taking care of his sister, always worrying, always trying to be strong for everyone else. I used to tell him he could put some of that weight down, that it wasn't his job to carry the whole world. What did he say? He said, "But who else is going to carry it, Pa?" Jacob smiled, sad and proud at once. I never had a good answer for him. Still don't. Sammy was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, what was he like when he wasn't being strong? Scared, angry, sad. All the things he thought he had to hide. Jacob met the boy's eyes. Same as you, I reckon. Sammy's careful mask cracked, just for a moment. Something raw and wounded showed through before he pulled it back together. I can't stop being strong. They need me. I know, and I ain't asking you to stop. Jacob reached out, slow and careful, and rested his hand on Sammy's shoulder. I'm just saying, you don't have to carry it alone anymore. That's what I'm here for. What Sarah's here for. You can put some of it down, Sammy. We'll help you hold the rest. The boy didn't respond, but he didn't pull away either. It was a start. The journal was in the loft. Grace found it because, of course she did. She'd been exploring while the adults searched, her small body able to fit into spaces they couldn't reach.
Jacob! Jacob, look!
She came down the ladder, clutching a leather-bound book, dusty and worn but intact.
Where did you find that?
There's a hole in the wall up there, behind the bed. I saw something shiny, and I reached in, and this was there. Grace held it up proudly. Is it important? Jacob took the book with trembling hands. Yeah, sweetheart. I think it might be very important. Sarah was at his side in an instant. Thomas's journal! Oh, God, Thomas's journal! Her hands covered her mouth. Open it, please. The first pages were ordinary. Notes about patients, observations about the weather, complaints about the price of supplies. But halfway through, the tone changed. March 15th, Jacob read aloud. Spoke with Margaret Tillman today. Her son William disappeared from the House of Mercy 3 months ago. Blackwood claims the boy was adopted by a family in California. But Margaret received a letter last week from her cousin in Nevada. He saw William working in a silver mine. The boy is 8 years old. Oh, God! Sarah's voice broke.
Thomas, why didn't you tell me?
Jacob kept reading. April 2nd. 4 more children missing. Blackwood's records show them as placed with families, but none of the families exist. I've checked. The addresses are empty lots, abandoned buildings, names that don't appear in any census. April 20th. Finally found a pattern. Children disappear every 6 weeks, always when the supply wagon comes through town. I followed it last night. It doesn't go to Denver like Blackwood claims. It turns south, toward the mining camps. He was documenting everything. Sarah's eyes were wet with tears and fury. He knew what Blackwood was doing. Jacob turned more pages. Names, dates, descriptions. A meticulous record of every child who had vanished from Willow Creek. And then, near the end, June 3rd. I have proof. Bills of sale. Actual bills of sale with Blackwood's signature. He's selling children to the mines, to ranches, to anyone who'll pay. I've made copies and hidden them in 3 locations. If something happens to me, Sarah will find them. She's clever. She'll know where to look. 3 locations? Sarah grabbed Jacob's arm. Where? Does he say where? Jacob scanned the remaining pages. The first copy is with our beginning. The second sleeps beneath the mercy he never showed. The third waits in the place where I first found hope. Riddles! Sarah's voice was tight with frustration. Even now, even trying to save lives, he couldn't just write it plain. He couldn't risk someone else finding them first. Jacob closed the journal carefully. But you know him, Sarah. You know how he thought. What do these mean? Our beginning. That could be... She stopped, eyes widening. The church. We were married in the church. The same church where Blackwood preaches? Yes, but underneath, there's a cellar. We found it by accident before the ceremony. Thomas said it was the perfect place to hide from cold feet. A broken laugh escaped her. He proposed to me again down there. Said he wanted our marriage to start in secret, just between us. Can we get to it? I don't know. Blackwood practically lives at that church now. Sarah's jaw set. But if Thomas's evidence is there, we have to try. What about the other 2? Beneath the mercy he never showed. That must be the orphanage itself. Under the House of Mercy. Sarah's hands clenched. And the place where I first found hope. That's the clinic, where Thomas and I set up after we moved here. It was falling apart when we bought it, but Thomas said it was full of possibility. The clinic burned. Most of it. But there was a root cellar, separate from the main building. It might still be intact. Jacob stood, his mind racing. 3 locations, 3 sets of evidence, enough to destroy Blackwood completely, if they could reach them. We split up. No. Sarah rose to face him. Absolutely not. Sarah, I said no. We stay together. We protect these children together. I'm not losing anyone else to that monster. And if Blackwood gets to the evidence first, if he destroys it before we can, then we find another way. Sarah gripped his arms, her eyes fierce. Listen to me, Jacob Cole. I have spent 2 years alone. 2 years fighting by myself, grieving by myself, surviving by myself. I am done being alone. We do this together, or we don't do it at all. Jacob looked at her. At the fire in her eyes, the steel in her spine, the desperate determination that had kept her standing when everything tried to knock her down. Together, he agreed. Always together. 3 days passed in the cabin. 3 days of healing, planning, preparing. Eli's cough improved with rest and the herbs Sarah had grabbed before the fire. The color came back to his cheeks, the strength to his voice. He spent hours poring over Thomas's journal, his sharp mind catching connections the adults had missed. Look here. He pointed to an entry dated 2 months before Thomas's death. He mentions a name, Edmund Graves. Says Graves is Blackwood's contact, the one who arranges the sales. Do we know this Graves? Jacob asked. I've heard the name, Sarah frowned. A businessman from Denver. He visited Willow Creek a few times, always stayed at Blackwood's house. If we could find Graves, get him to talk. He won't talk. Eli's voice was bitter with experience. Men like that don't talk. They're too scared of what happens if they do. Everyone talks eventually. You just have to find the right pressure point. And what's Graves's pressure point? That's what we need to find out. Tommy spoke on the 4th day. Not a word, not yet, but a full sentence, whispered to his brother while they thought no one was listening. I'm scared, Ben. Ben's sharp intake of breath was audible across the room. Tommy, you talked. Don't tell. Tommy's voice was rusty from disuse. Please, don't tell them. But Tommy, they'll be so happy. I'm not ready. The words came out broken, terrified. I can't. I don't want them to expect things. I'm not ready to be normal. Jacob caught Sarah's eye across the room. She pressed her finger to her lips, warning him to stay quiet, to let this moment belong to the twins alone. You don't have to be normal. Ben's voice was fierce with love. You just have to be you. You don't have to talk if you don't want to. But I want to. I want to so bad, Ben. I'm just scared. What if the words won't come out right? What if I try and I can't and everyone's disappointed? Nobody's going to be disappointed, especially not Jacob and Miss Sarah. They love us, Tommy, really love us. Not like Blackwood pretending. Real love. Tommy was quiet for a long moment. Then, You really think so? I know so. Can't you feel it? I feel safe. For the first time since Mama died, I feel safe. That's love, Tommy. That's what love feels like. Jacob turned away, his eyes burning. Sarah's hand found his, squeezing tight. They're going to be okay, she whispered. All of them. They're going to be okay. Yeah, his voice was rough. Yeah, I think they are. The attack came on the 5th night. They heard the horses first, then the voices. Rough, loud, drunk on power and cheap whiskey. Holloway, we know you're in there. Jacob was on his feet instantly, his revolver in his hand. Get the children to the loft, now. Jacob, now, Sarah. She moved. Sammy was already ahead of her, herding the younger children up the ladder with quiet efficiency. Eli stayed behind, his thin body tense with determination. "I can fight." "No." "I'm not helpless." "I know you ain't." Jacob gripped the boy's shoulder. "But right now, fighting means protecting them." He nodded toward the loft. "Sammy can't do it alone. He needs you. They need you." Eli's jaw worked. Then he nodded and climbed the ladder. Jacob moved to the window. Through the gaps in the shutters, he counted 6 men, maybe 7, all armed, all dangerous. And in front of them, mounted on a black horse, wearing black that swallowed the moonlight, Reverend Josiah Blackwood. "Mr. Cole," Blackwood's voice rang out, pleasant and poisonous. "I know you can hear me. I'm here to make you an offer. Only offer I'm interested in is you leaving." Now, let's be civilized." Blackwood spread his hands. "I'm a reasonable man. Give me the children and the journal, and you and Mrs. Holloway can walk away. No harm, no foul. You have my word." "Your word ain't worth the spit it takes to speak it." "Harsh." Blackwood's smile glinted in the darkness. "But understandable. You've been listening to troubled children and a grieving widow. Their perspectives are skewed. Their perspectives are the only truth I've heard since I came to this God-forsaken territory." "Truth," Blackwood laughed softly. "Truth is such a flexible thing, Mr. Cole. It changes depending on who's telling it, who's listening, who holds the power." His voice hardened. "Right now, I hold the power. 7 men with guns against 1 man with a revolver and a woman with delusions. The mathematics are not in your favor." "Maybe not, but I've beaten worse odds." "Have you? Have you really?" Blackwood leaned forward in his saddle. "I've done my research, Mr. Cole. Jacob Nathaniel Cole, former deputy sheriff, left law enforcement 5 years ago after a tragedy involving his family. Has been wandering ever since, looking for a way to atone for sins he believes he committed." Jacob's blood ran cold. "You don't know anything about me." "I know everything about you. I know you blame yourself for your family's death. I know you've been running from that guilt so long you've forgotten what it feels like to stand still. I know you attached yourself to these children because you see in them a chance at redemption." Blackwood's colorless eyes gleamed. "But here's what you don't know, Mr. Cole. Redemption isn't real. It's a fairy tale we tell ourselves to make the darkness bearable. There is no absolution. There is no forgiveness. There is only power, and who wields it." "You're wrong." "Am I? Then explain to me why your God let your children burn, while you chased shadows across the desert. Explain to me why he lets innocent children suffer and die, while men like me prosper. Explain to me why goodness is always punished, and evil always rewarded." "I can't explain it. Don't pretend to understand it." Jacob's voice was steady. "But I know this. Men like you always fall. Always. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually the scales balance. Eventually the bill comes due." "Poetic." Blackwood's smile twisted. "But poetry won't stop bullets. You have until the count of 10 to come out, or we burn this cabin with everyone inside." 1. "Jacob," Sarah's voice tight with fear. 2. "We can't fight them." "Not 7 of them." 3. "We don't have to fight all of them." 4. "What do you mean?" 5. Jacob turned to her, his eyes hard with desperate determination. "I just have to fight one. The head. Cut off the head, and the body dies." 6. "Jacob, no!" 7. "Take the children, the root cellar behind the cabin. There's a tunnel that leads to the creek. Thomas mentioned it in his journal." 8. "I'm not leaving you." 9. "Sarah!" He grabbed her face in both hands. "Please, please trust me. I can't protect them and fight at the same time. I need you to get them to safety. I need you to survive. For them. For me. 10. Blackwood raised his hand. I love you. Sarah's voice broke. I love you, Jacob Cole. I love you too. He kissed her, hard and desperate and full of everything they hadn't had time to say. Now go. She went. Jacob opened the door and stepped into the moonlight, his revolver raised, his eyes fixed on Reverend Josiah Blackwood. You want me? His voice carried across the clearing. Come and get me. The cold hit Jacob like a wall, but he barely felt it. His entire being was focused on the man on the black horse, the man who had hurt so many, killed so many, destroyed so many lives without ever getting his own hands dirty. Brave, Blackwood's voice carried approval he didn't feel. Foolish, but brave. I respect that. I don't want your respect. No, I suppose you don't. Blackwood dismounted slowly, deliberately, handing his reins to one of his men. You want justice, redemption, all those noble things that men like you chase because you can't accept the world as it truly is. And what is the world truly, Blackwood? A place where men sell children like cattle? A place where monsters wear preachers' clothes and call themselves servants of God? The world is a machine, Mr. Cole. It runs on fuel, money, power, fear. Those who understand this thrive. Those who don't, Blackwood spread his hands. Well, they end up like your doctor friend. Like those children you're so determined to protect. Like you will in a few moments. You talk too much. A habit of the profession. Blackwood smiled that empty smile. Before we conclude our business, I admit to a certain curiosity. The journal. You found it, obviously. What else did Thomas Holloway leave behind? Enough to destroy you. Ah. Blackwood's eyes flickered with something that might have been concern. The copies. He mentioned copies. Where are they? You think I'd tell you? I think you're a man with nothing left to lose. Such men can often be reasoned with. Blackwood took a step closer. I'm offering you a trade, Mr. Cole. The locations of those copies in exchange for the lives of those children. They walk away, you walk away. The widow walks away. Everyone survives. And how many children won't survive if I let you keep doing what you're doing? Blackwood's face didn't change. Those children serve a purpose. They fuel the machine. The mines need workers. The ranches need hands. The economy of this territory depends on labor that doesn't ask questions or demand fair wages. They're children. They're resources. Blackwood's voice went cold. Orphans, unwanted, forgotten. I give them purpose. I give them meaning. Is it ideal? Perhaps not. But the alternative is death in the streets, starvation, disease. At least with me, they're useful. Jacob felt the old fury rising, the same fury that had driven him across 3 territories, chasing men who deserved to die. But this time, he didn't push it down. This time, he let it fill him. My children were useful too. They were useful to me, to their mother, to everyone who loved them. And then they died because I wasn't there to protect them. His voice dropped low. I've spent 5 years trying to understand why, trying to find meaning in something meaningless. And you know what I've learned? Enlighten me. I've learned that some men don't deserve understanding. Some men don't deserve mercy, or compassion, or second chances. Some men just need to be stopped. He raised his revolver. The shot came from his left, tearing through his shoulder before he could squeeze the trigger. Jacob spun, his gun flying from his hand, pain exploding through his body like lightning. "Did you really think I'd come alone without precautions?" Blackwood's voice was almost pitying. "I've survived in this territory for 20 years, Mr. Cole. I've outlasted sheriffs, federal marshals, even a Pinkerton agent who thought he could bring me down. You're not the first righteous man to challenge me. You won't be the last." Jacob fell to his knees, his good hand pressing against the wound, blood seeping between his fingers. The world swam in and out of focus. "Finish him." Blackwood turned away, already bored. "Then search the cabin. The woman and children can't have gone far." "Wait." The word came out strangled, desperate. "Wait." Blackwood paused. "Yes?" "The copies. You want to know where they are?" "I'm listening." Jacob forced himself to meet Blackwood's eyes. "One is in the church, the cellar beneath the altar. One is at the orphanage, buried under the floor of the punishment room. And one," he laughed, blood bubbling on his lips, "one is with a federal marshal in Denver. Posted it myself 3 days ago. Should be arriving any day now." Blackwood's face went pale. "You're lying." "Am I? You said yourself, I'm a man with nothing left to lose. Why would I lie?" "Because you're trying to buy time. Because you're hoping—" "I'm hoping for nothing." Jacob's voice was steady despite the agony. "I made my peace with dying the moment I walked out that door. But you? You haven't made peace with anything. You've spent your whole life running from consequences, hiding behind power and money and fear. And now those consequences are coming, Blackwood. Not from me. From the law. The real law. The kind you can't buy, or intimidate, or kill. Shoot him." Blackwood's voice cracked with fury. "Shoot him now." The man who'd wounded Jacob stepped forward, raising his rifle. Jacob closed his eyes, thinking of Sarah, of the children, of his family waiting for him in whatever came next. The shot never came. Instead, he heard hoofbeats, many hoofbeats, and voices shouting, commanding, authoritative. "Federal marshals! Nobody move!" Jacob's eyes flew open. Riders poured into the clearing, a dozen at least, badges glinting in the moonlight. At their head rode a woman on a gray horse, her auburn hair streaming behind her, her face fierce with determination. Sarah. "That man is Reverend Josiah Blackwood." Sarah's voice rang out clear and strong. "He's responsible for the disappearance of over 60 children from this territory. He murdered my husband, Dr. Thomas Holloway, when Thomas tried to expose him, and he just ordered the execution of the man on his knees there, who has evidence to prove all of it." The lead marshal dismounted, his eyes moving between Blackwood and Jacob. "That true?" "It's lies." Blackwood's voice had changed, becoming smooth, reasonable, the voice of a man who had talked his way out of trouble 1,000 times. "This woman is grief-stricken, confused. She's been harboring fugitive children from my orphanage, and this man is Jacob Cole." Sarah swung down from her horse, running to Jacob's side. "Former deputy sheriff of Clearwater County, Colorado. He's got 20 years of law enforcement service, and he's got the evidence to bury you." "Evidence? What evidence?" "Thomas's journal." Sarah held up the leather-bound book. "Every child you ever sold, every payment you ever received, every contact you ever used. It's all here, Blackwood. Names, dates, amounts. Enough to hang you 10 times over." Blackwood's face contorted with rage. "That journal is stolen property. It proves nothing." "Maybe not by itself." The lead marshal stepped forward, pulling a folded document from his coat. "But combined with the sworn testimony I've got here from Edmund Graves, it proves plenty. Graves would never. Graves talked the moment we showed him a noose." The marshal's voice was flat, unimpressed. "Turns out he's not as brave as you thought. Gave us everything. The routes, the buyers, the whole operation. Been unraveling for months now. You just didn't know it, because you were too busy playing God in this little kingdom of yours." Blackwood's eyes darted around the clearing, looking for escape, for options, for some way out of the trap that had closed around him. His men had dropped their weapons, their loyalty evaporating in the face of federal badges. "This is a mistake," Blackwood's voice rose, taking on the thundering quality he used in sermons. "I am a man of God.
I have dedicated my life to serving the least fortunate among us. These accusations are the work of the devil, meant to destroy. Save it for the judge." The marshal nodded to his men. "Take him." They moved forward, rough hands grabbing Blackwood's arms, forcing them behind his back. For the first time since Jacob had known him, the mask slipped completely. Blackwood's face twisted into something ugly, something true. "You think this is over?" He spat the words at Jacob, at Sarah, at everyone who had gathered to witness his fall. "You think you've won? The machine doesn't stop because you remove one part. It keeps running. It always keeps running." "Maybe," Jacob pushed himself to his feet, swaying with pain and blood loss. "But you won't be around to see it." "I'll see you in hell, Cole." "Probably, but I reckon I'll have better company." They dragged Blackwood away. His curses echoed through the clearing until they faded into the night. And then there was silence. Sarah caught Jacob as his legs gave out, lowering him gently to the ground. Her hands found the wound in his shoulder, pressing hard against the bleeding. "You idiot!" Tears streamed down her face. "You absolute idiot! You could have died." "Almost did," he managed a weak smile. "But you came back." "Of course I came back. Did you think I was going to run away and hide while you sacrificed yourself like some kind of fool hero?" "That was the plan." "It was a stupid plan." "Fair enough." Jacob's eyes found hers. "How did you... the marshals?" "Maddie Chen," Sarah's voice caught. "The Chinese woman from the general store. She saw us leave town that first night. Saw Blackwood's men following us. She rode to Denver herself, told the marshals everything she'd seen over the years. Everything she'd been too scared to report." "Maddie Chen saved us?" "The whole territory's been working against Blackwood in secret. People who were too afraid to speak up alone." When Maddie started talking, others came forward. It snowballed. Sarah laughed through her tears. "Turns out you were right, Jacob. Fear only works if everyone's afraid. Once one person stands up, others find their courage." "Smart woman. She's waiting in town. Wants to meet the man who started all this." Sarah's hand found his face, cupping his cheek. "The man who saved 6 children because he couldn't walk past a barn without checking inside." "Sarah," Jacob's voice was growing weaker. "The children, they're safe. They're all safe. Eli's watching over them at Maddie's store. They're warm and fed and..." Her voice broke. "And asking for you. All of them. Even Sammy." "Even Sammy?" "He said..." Sarah wiped her eyes with her free hand. "He said to tell you he was sorry for not believing. He said you kept your promise, and nobody's ever done that before." Jacob felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been tight for 5 years. 5 long years of running and hiding and hating himself for being alive when his family wasn't. "I need you to do something for me." His voice was barely a whisper. "Anything. Don't let me die before I see them again. I made a promise." "You're not going to die." Sarah's voice was fierce, absolute. "I'm not losing anyone else, Jacob Cole. Not you, not them, not ever again." "That's a lot of promising. I learned from the best." The marshals brought a wagon. They loaded Jacob into the back, his head in Sarah's lap, her hand still pressing against the wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. The ride back to Willow Creek was a blur of pain and darkness.
Jacob drifted in and out, catching fragments of conversation, pieces of a world that kept moving even as he lay still. Lost a lot of blood. Doctor in town, but he's Blackwood's man. I'm a nurse. I can do it. I've done it before. And then, cutting through everything else, a small voice. Clear and determined and absolutely certain. Jacob! Jacob, wake up! Grace. He forced his eyes open. Her face swam above him, blurry but beautiful. Hey, sweetheart. You're not allowed to die. Grace's voice wobbled, but she didn't cry. I didn't give you permission, and you promised. You promised you wouldn't leave. I remember. So you have to keep it. You have to. Her small hand found his, squeezing with surprising strength. Eli says you're going to be fine. Eli's smart. He knows things. Is that so? That's so. Eli's voice came from somewhere to his left. I've seen men survive worse, Mr. Cole. You just gotta fight. You gotta want to live more than you want to rest. Been fighting my whole life. Then don't stop now. Not when you finally got something worth fighting for. Jacob looked at the faces around him. Sarah, her eyes red but her jaw set. Eli, thin and sick but standing tall. Sammy, his careful mask finally cracked open, showing the frightened boy underneath. Lily singing softly, her one good eye fixed on Jacob's face. Ben and Tommy pressed together, Tommy's lips moving silently, praying maybe, or just trying to find words that had been lost for so long. And Grace, fierce little Grace, who had been abandoned by everyone, but refused to stop believing in angels. His family, not by blood, by choice, by circumstance, by the strange grace that had led him to a barn in a snowstorm and changed everything. All right. His voice was rough. All right. I'll fight. Promise? Promise. The surgery took 3 hours. Sarah worked by lamplight, her hands steady despite her exhaustion, despite her terror, despite the voice in her head that kept saying, "This is how I lost Thomas. This is how it all falls apart." But Thomas hadn't had children holding his hand. Thomas hadn't had Eli reading medical texts aloud, pointing out techniques Sarah had forgotten. Thomas hadn't had Sammy standing guard at the door, his back straight, his eyes fierce, ready to fight anyone who tried to interfere. And Thomas hadn't had Sarah herself. Not really. They'd loved each other, but there had always been something missing. A spark, a fire. The kind of desperate, consuming love that made you believe in impossible things. She had that now. She had Jacob. The bullet came out clean. The bleeding stopped. And as dawn broke over Willow Creek, Jacob Cole opened his eyes. Told you. Eli's voice was smug with relief. I'm always right. Don't let it go to your head. But Sammy was smiling. Actually smiling. Maybe for the first time since Jacob had known him. Grace climbed onto the bed, curling against Jacob's good side. Can I stay here? Just for a little while? As long as you want, sweetheart. Forever? Forever. Sarah sat down on his other side, her hand finding his. The marshals want to talk to you. When you're ready. They've got questions about Blackwood, about the evidence, about everything. Later. That's what I told them. She leaned down, pressing her forehead against his. Right now, you rest. Right now, you heal. Everything else can wait. Sarah. Yeah? Thank you. For coming back. For not giving up. For being... He struggled for words. For being... you. Couldn't be anyone else. She kissed him softly. Wouldn't want to be. The next few days passed in the haze of healing and hope. The town of Willow Creek transformed overnight. With Blackwood gone, It was as if a curse had been lifted. People who had been afraid to speak now couldn't stop talking. Stories poured out, years of horror and silence finally finding voice. The sheriff was arrested, along with half the town council. The House of Mercy was shut down, its children distributed to families who actually wanted them. The mine owners who had purchased Blackwood's young slaves were facing federal charges.
And through it all, Sarah's clinic, hastily rebuilt with help from neighbors who had suddenly found their conscience, became the center of everything.
"Mrs. Holloway?" A woman appeared at the door, her face lined with years of hard living, her eyes wet with tears. "My name is Margaret Tillman. You don't know me, but your husband. He was trying to find my boy, William. He was trying to bring him home." Sarah took the woman's hands. "I know. I read his journals. He never stopped looking." "They found him." Margaret's voice broke. "The marshals. He was in a silver mine in Nevada. He's coming home. After 3 years, my boy is coming home." The stories multiplied. Children found, families reunited. Justice, slow and imperfect but real, finally catching up with those who had thought themselves untouchable. Jacob watched it all from his bed, too weak to do more than observe. "You did this," Sammy stood at the window, looking out at the busy street. "All of it."
Because you couldn't walk past a barn.
"We did it, all of us." "No." Sammy turned to face him. "I know what I am, Mr. Cole. I'm just a kid. A scared, angry kid who is trying to keep his family alive. You're the one who made it mean something. You're the one who turned our survival into—" he struggled for words, "into a crusade." "Big word." "Eli taught me." A ghost of a smile. "He's been teaching me a lot of things. He's a smart boy." "He's dying." Sammy's voice caught. "You know that, right? The consumption. It's getting worse. Sarah says maybe a year, if we're lucky." Jacob closed his eyes. He'd known. Of course he'd known. He'd seen the blood on Eli's lips, heard the wetness in his lungs, watched the light in his eyes flicker and fade a little more each day. "Then we make sure it's a good year." "How?" "By loving him. By letting him know that he matters. By giving him a family that sees him for who he is, not what he can do." Jacob opened his eyes. "That's all any of us can do, Sammy. Love the people we've got, for as long as we've got them. And try not to waste a single day." Sammy was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly, he crossed the room and sat down on the edge of Jacob's bed. "Can I tell you something?" "Anything." "I used to hate you." The words came out rough, reluctant. "When you first showed up, I thought you were just another adult making promises you wouldn't keep. Another person who'd disappear when things got hard." "And now?" "Now I think—" Sammy's jaw worked. "I think maybe you're the father I always wanted. The one I dreamed about when I was little, before my real pa died, before everything went wrong." His voice cracked. "Is that stupid?" "No, son." Jacob reached out, his hand finding Sammy's shoulder. "That's not stupid at all." "I don't know how to be a kid. I've been taking care of everyone for so long, I forgot how to just be." "Then let me take care of you for a while. Let Sarah take care of you. Let us be the adults, and you be the 10-year-old boy you're supposed to be." "It's hard." "I know." "I'm scared." "I know that too." Jacob squeezed his shoulder. "But here's the thing, Sammy. You don't have to be brave anymore. Not for us. We're going to be brave for you. All you have to do is let us." Something broke in Sammy's face. The last wall, the final defense, the armor he'd been wearing since his father died and his mother walked away. He fell into Jacob's arms and sobbed. Jacob held him. This boy who had been a father to 5 children when he was barely more than a child himself. This boy who had carried impossibilities on his thin shoulders and refused to break. This boy who was finally allowing himself to be small. "I've got you," Jacob whispered. "I've got you, son. I'm not going anywhere. None of us are. This is your family now. This is your home."
Promise?
"I promise." And this time, when Jacob made the promise, he knew he would keep it. Not because he had to, not because he felt guilty, but because these children, this woman, this strange and broken and beautiful family, they were his. His to love, his to protect, his to fight for, his forever. Spring came to Willow Creek like a promise kept. The snow melted, revealing green grass and wildflowers that had been waiting beneath the frozen ground. The creek swelled with mountain runoff, singing its way through the valley. And everywhere, the signs of a town being reborn. New buildings rising, old wounds healing, people learning to look each other in the eye again. Jacob stood on the porch of the rebuilt clinic, watching the children play in the yard. Grace chased butterflies with Lily, their laughter carrying on the warm breeze. Ben practiced with his new crutch, the one Jacob had carved himself from mountain ash, while Tommy walked beside him, silent still, but present, aware, alive. Sammy sat apart, reading one of Thomas's medical books. He'd decided he wanted to be a doctor. Sarah had cried when he told her. And Eli. Eli sat in a chair by the window, wrapped in blankets despite the warmth, watching everything with those bright, knowing eyes that saw more than any child should. "You're staring at me again." Eli's voice was weak but amused. "I'm not dead yet, Mr. Cole." "Just making sure." "Liar. You're worrying." Eli smiled, that smile that could light up a room, even as his body failed him. "Miss Sarah told you to stop that." "Miss Sarah tells me to stop a lot of things. Don't mean I listen." Jacob crossed to Eli's side, settling into the chair beside him. The boy had grown thinner over the past months. The medicine helped, but it couldn't cure what ailed him. They all knew it. They just didn't talk about it. "The trial's tomorrow." Eli's eyes found Jacob's. "You nervous?" "Should I be?" "Blackwood's got fancy lawyers, money, connections. Even locked up, he's dangerous. He's got nothing that matters. We've got the truth. Truth doesn't always win." "It will this time." Jacob's voice was firm. "I'll make sure of it." Eli was quiet for a moment. Then, "I want to testify." "Eli, I know what you're going to say. I'm too sick. It's too much. But Mr. Cole." Eli's thin hand found Jacob's, gripping with surprising strength. "I was in that orphanage for 4 years. I saw things. Things nobody else saw. Things nobody else lived through. If I don't tell them, who will?" "The other children." "The other children were sheltered by me and Sammy as much as we could. They didn't see the worst of it. I did." Eli's jaw set in that stubborn way that reminded Jacob so much of himself. "I need to do this. For all the children who didn't make it out. For the ones buried in that graveyard behind the House of Mercy, with no names on their stones." Jacob looked at this boy, this dying, brilliant, brave boy who had somehow become his son. "All right, but I'm sitting right behind you the whole time. And if it gets too much, I'll tell you, I promise." Eli smiled. "See? I'm learning to ask for help. Miss Sarah says it's a miracle." "Miss Sarah's not wrong." The courthouse was packed. People had come from all over the territory, families who had lost children, journalists chasing the story, officials from Denver who wanted to be seen on the right side of history. The room buzzed with tension, with anticipation, with the electric charge of justice finally coming due. Blackwood sat at the defendant's table, his black suit immaculate, his face arranged in an expression of wounded dignity. He'd lost weight in prison, and his colorless eyes had taken on a hunted quality. But his voice, when he spoke, was still smooth as oil. "This is a travesty," he told the judge during opening statements. "A conspiracy of lies orchestrated by a grieving widow and a drifter with a checkered past." "Save it for your testimony, Reverend." Judge Harrison's voice was dry. "We'll hear from the prosecution first." The prosecutor was a young man from Denver named William Frost. He'd taken the case pro bono, he'd told Sarah, because his own brother had disappeared from an orphanage in Kansas when they were children. "Ladies and gentlemen," Frost began, "the evidence you will see today documents a systematic operation of child trafficking that has operated in this territory for nearly 20 years. You will hear from survivors. You will see bills of sale for children, and you will understand that the man sitting before you is not a servant of God, but a monster in shepherd's clothing." Witness after witness took the stand. Edmund Graves, Blackwood's former partner, now desperate to save his own neck. Margaret Tillman, clutching a photograph of her son William. Former employees of the House of Mercy who had finally found the courage to speak. And then Eli. He walked to the witness stand slowly, his thin body wrapped in a coat too big for him, his steps careful and measured. Jacob watched from the gallery, his hands clenched at his sides, ready to intervene at the first sign of distress. "Please state your name for the record." Frost's voice was gentle. "Elijah Crow. They call me Eli." "And how old are you, Eli?" 9 years old, sir." "Can you tell the court how you came to be at the House of Mercy?" Eli's eyes found Jacob's in the gallery. Jacob nodded, just once. "My mama died when I was 5. Eli's voice was steady, clear. "Consumption. Same as what I've got now. After she passed, I didn't have nobody. My daddy was already gone, killed by men who didn't like the color of his skin. So I wandered, begged, stole when I had to, until Reverend Blackwood found me." "And what happened when he found you?" "He said he was going to save me, said God had sent him to give me a home." Eli's jaw tightened. He lied. "Can you describe what life was like at the House of Mercy?" "We worked, every day, sun up to sundown. Cleaning, cooking, mending, hauling. Children as young as 4, working till their hands bled." Eli's voice hardened. "If you complained, you got beat. If you cried, you got locked in the cellar. If you tried to run—" He stopped, swallowing hard. "Take your time, son. If you tried to run, you disappeared. Reverend Blackwood would say you'd been adopted, sent to a good family somewhere far away. But we knew. We all knew." "Knew what?" "That the children who disappeared weren't adopted. They were sold." Eli's eyes met Blackwood's across the courtroom. "I saw the money change hands. I saw the men who came to collect them. Rough men, mining men, ranch hands who needed cheap labor and didn't care how they got it." "Objection," Blackwood's lawyer rose. "The witness is a child. His testimony is unreliable." "I'm dying." Eli's voice cut through the courtroom like a blade. "I've got maybe 6 months left, if I'm lucky. And I'll be damned if I spend them letting this man get away with what he did." Silence. "Overruled." Judge Harrison's voice was quiet. "Continue, Mr. Frost." "Eli, can you tell us about the night you and the other children escaped?" "Yes, sir." Eli took a deep breath. "It was January, coldest night of the year. Reverend Blackwood came to the dormitory and told 6 of us to pack our things. Said we'd been selected for special placement." "Did you believe him?" "No, sir. I knew what special placement meant. It meant someone had paid for us. It meant we were being sold." "So what did you do?" I gathered the others. Samuel Wade. He helped me. We waited until the Reverend was asleep, and then we ran." Eli's voice wavered. "We ran as far as we could, but we were small and cold and scared. We hid in an abandoned barn about 3 miles out of town. We thought we'd be safe there. But you weren't safe." "No, sir. We were dying." A tear slipped down Eli's cheek. 3 days in that barn with no food, no fire, no hope. The little ones were crying. Tommy had stopped talking. I was coughing blood. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. I thought we were all going to die there. I'd made peace with it. What changed? Eli's eyes found Jacob again. A stranger came, a man I'd never seen before. He could have walked past, could have pretended he didn't see us. That's what everyone else did. Eli's voice strengthened. But Jacob Cole didn't walk past. He ran to us. He picked us up and carried us to safety. He fought for us when no one else would. And where are you now, Eli? Home. The word came out soft, reverent. I'm home, with my family, my real family. No further questions. Blackwood's lawyer tried to discredit Eli's testimony, tried to paint him as a liar, a troubled child, a sick boy prone to delusions. But Eli didn't waver. He answered every question with quiet dignity, with the unshakable certainty of someone who had nothing left to lose. When he finally stepped down from the stand, the courtroom was silent. Sammy was next, then Lily, then, to everyone's surprise, Tommy. The silent twin walked to the witness stand with Ben at his side. His face was pale, his hands trembling. He'd barely spoken a dozen words since they'd left the barn, and most of those had been to his brother. Tommy. Frost's voice was impossibly gentle. Can you tell us what you remember about the House of Mercy? Tommy's mouth opened, closed. His eyes darted around the room, wild with panic. It's okay, son. Take your time. Silence stretched. Seconds became an eternity. And then, from the gallery, Grace's voice rang out, clear and pure. You can do it, Tommy. We believe in you. Tommy's eyes found Grace, found Ben, found Jacob and Sarah and all the people who had become his family. He opened his mouth. Bad. The word came out rusty, broken. Bad place. Bad man. He pointed at Blackwood, his small fingers steady despite the trembling in the rest of his body. He hurt us. He hurt all of us. Thank you, Tommy. Frost's voice was thick. No further questions. Tommy stumbled back to the gallery, collapsing into Ben's arms. The twins held each other, both crying now. Two broken halves finally becoming whole. He talked. Ben's voice was barely a whisper. Tommy talked. Yeah, Jacob's hand found both their shoulders. Yeah, he did. The verdict came down 3 hours later. Guilty, on all counts. The courtroom erupted. Cheers, tears, embraces. Years of fear and silence finally breaking into relief and joy. Blackwood stood motionless as the judge pronounced sentence. Life in prison. No possibility of parole. His empire destroyed, his reputation in ashes, his future nothing but iron bars and cold stone. As the marshals led him away, he passed close to where Jacob stood with his family. Their eyes met. You think you've won. Blackwood's voice was barely a whisper. You haven't won. You've just delayed the inevitable. Maybe. Jacob's voice was calm. But my children are safe. That's all I ever wanted. They're not your children. They are now. They walked out of the courthouse into sunshine, all of them together. Sarah on Jacob's arm, Grace holding Lily's hand, Ben and Tommy pressed together as always, Sammy trying to look strong but failing to hide his tears, and Eli, weak and pale but smiling like he'd seen the gates of heaven. "We did it," Sarah's voice broke. "We actually did it." "We did." Jacob pulled her close. "All of us." "What happens now?" Jacob looked at his family, at these 6 children who had walked out of a snowstorm and into his heart, at this woman who had shown him that second chances were real. "Now we go home and we start living." Summer unfolded like a gift. Jacob worked on the clinic every day, rebuilding, expanding, making it into something that could serve the whole territory. Sarah saw patients from dawn to dusk, her reputation growing as word spread of the widow doctor who had helped bring down the most powerful man in Wyoming. And the children flourished. Sammy threw himself into his studies, determined to become a doctor like Thomas. He still carried himself like a leader, but the weight had changed. He smiled now, laughed, let himself be a child in ways he'd forgotten how to be. Lily learned to read with her one good eye, devouring every book Sarah could find. She still sang her Irish songs, but now they were happy ones, songs about love and hope and new beginnings. Ben's leg grew stronger with exercise and the brace Jacob had built. He raced through the fields with Tommy at his side, and if he couldn't run as fast as the others, no one mentioned it. Tommy talked more every day. Not a lot, not easily, but enough. His first full sentence had been, "I love you, Ben." His second had been, "Pass the potatoes." Both had made Sarah cry. Grace remained Grace, fierce and bright and absolutely certain that the world was full of angels watching over them. She'd adopted every stray animal in the territory, and the clinic's yard had become a menagerie of cats, dogs, and one very confused chicken. And Eli. Eli lived. Against all odds, against all expectations, Eli lived through summer and into fall. His cough worsened, but his spirit only grew stronger. He spent his days teaching the younger children, writing letters to other orphanages warning them about men like Blackwood, planning a future he knew might not come. "I've decided something." Eli found Jacob on the porch one September evening, the air already carrying hints of the cold to come. "I want to be baptized." Jacob looked at him. "I thought you didn't trust God." "I didn't trust men who claimed to speak for God. That's different." Eli settled into the chair beside Jacob's. "But I've been thinking about what happened, about how a stranger stopped at a barn in a snowstorm because he couldn't walk past dying children, about how a widowed doctor took us in when everyone else turned away, about how a whole town changed because a few people refused to be afraid." "What does that have to do with God?" "Maybe everything, maybe nothing." Eli's eyes found the sunset. "But I figure, if there is a God, he's not in churches or sermons or men in black coats who sell children for profit. He's in people like you, like Miss Sarah, like us when we take care of each other." Jacob was quiet for a long moment. "When do you want to do it?" "Sunday, before winter comes." "Before—" Eli stopped. "Before what?" "Before I can't anymore." Eli's voice was matter-of-fact. "I'm getting weaker, Mr. Cole. I can feel it. The medicine helps, but it's not going to help forever." "Eli, don't." Eli held up a hand. "Don't tell me it's going to be okay. Don't tell me to keep fighting. I've been fighting my whole life, and I'm tired." His eyes found Jacob's. "But I'm not sad. That's what I want you to know. For the first time in my life, I'm not sad. I have a family. I have a home. I have people who love me and who I love back. When I go, You're not going anywhere. When I go, Eli continued firmly, I'll go knowing that I mattered, that my life meant something, that the children I protected are safe and loved and have a future. That's more than I ever thought I'd have. Jacob's eyes burned. You should have more. You should have everything. I do have everything. Right here. Right now. Eli reached out, his thin hand finding Jacob's. Thank you, Mr. Cole, for stopping at that barn, for seeing us when nobody else would, for giving us a chance to be more than orphans and outcasts and broken things. You were never broken, Eli. Not to me. I know, Eli smiled. That's why I love you, Pa. The word hit Jacob like a physical blow. Pa. He'd been Mr. Cole for so long, had kept that distance because he wasn't sure he deserved more. You don't have to call me that. I want to. I've wanted to for months, Eli's grip tightened. You gave me a father when I thought I'd never have one again. Let me give you a son. Jacob couldn't speak, couldn't find words for the hurricane of emotion tearing through his chest. So he did the only thing he could. He pulled Eli into his arms and held him. Father and son, on a porch in Wyoming, watching the sun set on a world that had finally become kind. The wedding was in October. Sarah wore a simple white dress that had belonged to her mother. Jacob wore his best suit, the one he'd bought special for the occasion. And the children, all 6 of them, stood beside them as witnesses. Dearly beloved, the new preacher began. He was a young man from the East, sent to replace Blackwood. He'd been horrified when he'd learned what his predecessor had done, and had dedicated himself to rebuilding the church's reputation, one act of kindness at a time. We are gathered here today to witness the union of Jacob Nathaniel Cole and Sarah Elizabeth Holloway in holy matrimony. Grace giggled. Sammy shushed her. Lily smiled at nothing, seeing something beautiful that only she could perceive. Do you, Jacob, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part? Jacob looked at Sarah, at this woman who had pulled a shotgun on him the first time they met, who had saved his life with hands that should have been too gentle for surgery, who had stood beside him against an entire town and never once backed down. I do. And do you, Sarah, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Sarah's eyes sparkled with tears. I do. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Jacob kissed her. The children cheered, and somewhere, Jacob could have sworn he heard other voices joining the celebration. Martha and Will, Thomas, all the people they'd lost and loved, watching from wherever the good souls go. There's one more thing. Sarah pulled back, her eyes bright with mischief. Jacob Cole, as of today, you're not just my husband. Oh? The territorial judge signed the papers this morning. Sarah turned to the children, who were practically vibrating with excitement. As of today, legally and officially, you are the father of Samuel, Lily, Benjamin, Thomas, Grace, and Elijah. Jacob went still. You adopted them? We adopted them. Together. Sarah took his hand, squeezing tight. They're ours now. Really ours. Forever. The children rushed him, Grace first, launching herself into his arms with a shriek of joy. Then Lily, then Ben, then even Sammy, who was crying openly now and didn't even try to hide it. Tommy held back for a moment. Then, slowly, carefully, he stepped forward. Pa. The word was barely a whisper. Yeah, son? Home. Tommy's face broke into a smile, the first real smile Jacob had ever seen from him. We're home. Jacob gathered them all close, his children, his family, his second chance at everything he'd lost. Yeah. His voice was rough with emotion. We're home. Winter came gently that year. The first snow fell on Christmas Eve, covering Willow Creek in a blanket of white. Inside the clinic, no, inside the Cole house, a fire burned warm and bright. Sarah was in the kitchen, making enough food for an army. The children ran through the rooms, hanging decorations, fighting over the best ornaments, generally causing the kind of beautiful chaos that only a house full of love could contain. And Jacob sat by the window, watching it all. "Penny for your thoughts," Sarah appeared beside him, 2 cups of cider in her hands. "Just thinking about how different things were a year ago." He took the cider, his eyes still on the children. "A year ago, I was dying in a snowstorm, alone, broken, ready to give up. And now? Now I've got everything I ever wanted, and a few things I didn't know I needed." He pulled her close. "How did this happen, Sarah? How did we get here?" Grace would say, "Angels." "And what would you say?" "I'd say," Sarah pressed her head against his shoulder, "I'd say that sometimes, when people are brave enough to care about each other, impossible things become possible. I'd say that love, real love, the kind that makes you better instead of smaller, can heal wounds that seem unhealable." "That's pretty philosophical." "I've had a lot of time to think." She smiled up at him. "Having a husband who nearly dies on you twice gives you perspective." "Pa! Ma!" Grace came running in, her face bright with excitement. "Eli says we can open one present tonight. Can we? Please?" "Did Eli say that? Or did you say that and convince Eli to agree?" Grace's face scrunched with guilty innocence. "Maybe both?" Sarah laughed. "One present each, then bed." The children gathered around the tree, a real tree, cut from the mountain and decorated with everything they could find. Popcorn strings, paper stars, a slightly crooked angel on top that Grace had made herself. "Wait," Eli's voice was soft. "Before we open presents, I want to say something." Everyone went quiet. "A year ago, I was sure I was going to die." Eli's eyes moved from face to face. Sarah, Jacob, Sammy, Lily, Ben, Tommy, Grace. I'd made peace with it. I thought dying was the best thing I could hope for. At least it would be an end to the hurting. "Eli," Sarah started. "Let me finish, please." Eli took a deep breath. "But then Jacob found us, and Miss Sarah took us in. And slowly, day by day, I started to believe in something I'd given up on a long time ago." "What's that?" Grace asked. "Hope," Eli smiled. "I started to hope, to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. That I could have a family, a home, a future, even if it was a short one." "It's not going to be short," Sammy said fiercely. "You're going to live forever." "Nobody lives forever, Sammy, but that's okay. Because what matters isn't how long you live. It's how much you love." Eli's eyes found Jacob's. "And I've loved more in this 1 year than most people love in a lifetime. So whatever happens next, I want you all to know I'm grateful for every single day, for every single one of you." Grace started crying. Then Lily. Then, to everyone's shock, Sammy. "Group hug," Grace declared through her tears. "Group hug right now." They came together, all 8 of them, a tangle of arms and tears and love, so powerful it seemed to fill the whole room. "Merry Christmas," Eli whispered. "Merry Christmas, family." "Merry Christmas, son." Jacob held on tight. "Merry Christmas." Spring returned. Eli lived to see it, lived to see the snow melt and the flowers bloom, and his siblings grow taller and stronger and happier. He died on the Tuesday in April, with his family around him, his hand in Jacob's, his last words a smile. "Tell them," he whispered at the end. "Tell them it doesn't hurt. Tell them I can see Mama. She's beautiful, Pa. She's so beautiful." "I'll tell them." "And Pa?" "Yes, son?" "Thank you for stopping at that barn." Jacob couldn't speak, could only hold on as Eli's breath slowed, stopped. And then Elijah Crow was gone. They buried him on the hill behind the house, where he could see the sunrise every morning and the sunset every night. The whole town came to the funeral. People who had been strangers a year ago, now friends, now family. Grace put wildflowers on his grave every day until winter came again. Sammy finished his medical studies in Eli's memory, becoming the doctor Eli always believed he could be. And every Christmas they lit a candle and told stories about the boy who had taught them all what it meant to hope. Years passed. The children grew. Sammy married a teacher from Denver and opened his own clinic. Lily became a singer, her voice carrying her across the country. Ben and Tommy started a ranch together, inseparable as always. And Grace, fierce, bright, angel-believing Grace, became a nurse, working beside her mother to heal people the way Sarah had healed her. Through it all, Jacob and Sarah remained, grew old together, loved each other through good times and hard times, through joy and grief, through all the ordinary miracles of a life lived fully. On their last night together, 50 years after that first snowstorm, Jacob held Sarah's hand as she slept. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving me a second chance, for showing me that it's never too late to start over." Sarah stirred, her eyes opening just a crack. "Jacob? I'm here." "I know." She smiled, that smile he'd loved for half a century. "You always are." Always. "Jacob?" "Yeah?" "It was a good life, wasn't it? All of it. Even the hard parts." Jacob thought about the children they'd raised, the grandchildren who called them Pa and Ma, the great-grandchildren who ran through the house every Sunday, filling it with noise and chaos and love. He thought about Eli, waiting for them somewhere beyond the sunset, about Thomas, who had started it all, about Martha and Will, who had sent him toward this life even as they let him go. He thought about a barn in a snowstorm and a choice that had changed everything. "Yeah," he said finally. "It was a good life. The best life." Sarah's eyes drifted closed. Her breathing steadied, and Jacob Cole held on, just as he'd been holding on for 50 years. Because that's what love did. It held on. Through winter and spring, through loss and hope, through endings and beginnings. It held on, and it never let go. Not ever. The Cole family legacy lived on for generations. 6 children who had been thrown into the snow to die became the roots of a tree that spread across the entire territory, branches reaching toward a sky full of stars that Grace always swore were angels. And every year, on the anniversary of that first snowstorm, the family gathered to tell the story. The story of a broken cowboy who couldn't walk past a barn. The story of a widow doctor who refused to give up. The story of 6 children who taught a town how to see again. And the story of love, real love, the kind that transforms and heals and makes impossible things possible. Because in the end, that's the only story that matters. The story of how we find each other. The story of how we choose each other. The story of how we become family, not by blood, but by heart. And that is a story that never ends.